It's great to be presenting to this group, and I'm so grateful, Paul, for the work you all are doing, like that weekly lab as well as the daily news summaries. They're like a port in a storm for those of us who are trying to figure this out for our organizations, maybe in something of a silo. So I'm just trying to get my, can you see my slides?
We can see them, yes.
I will try to look at here, even though you're now over here, and I don't, maybe I can fix that. Sorry, I'm not a Zoom person, but I think I can probably get this sorted out. There we go. All right, excellent. So yeah, so I'm here to talk about AI Forward, which is our collaborative AI adoption group that we started at CarGurus. So CarGurus is a two-sided used car marketplace. We are the #1 visited used car marketplace, online used car marketplace in the US. And we also have the greatest number of vehicle listings. So we are a leader in the automotive space. And whoop, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so I'll just tell you a little bit about me. So my background is more of a technologist. So I spent as long as I possibly could in graduate school and really enjoyed it. Then was focused on data science, machine learning, engineering at Twitter and Canopy. And my specialization there was really on recommender systems, private personalization. So I have a history of thinking deeply about the ethical implications of AI systems, even before this, latest wave of AI. And I also did a stint as a high school math and physics teacher, which gave me great respect for that profession and also helped me really cultivate my skills as a leader and communicator, because if you can persuade a 14 to 18-year-old to do something, then leading adults is easy work after that. So that really transitioned into my perspective as a broader data and analytics leader. When I moved to CarGurus, I got to lead our data science team, and that was a really great opportunity to be a generalist, to work with stakeholders that were across our entire organization and serve our sales org and our consumer-facing product, our dealer-facing product. And I really kind of hit my stride as this sort of glue figure between the technology and the business. And so when AI started happening, which I guess we would all like measure that at different times, but like this latest wave, I'll say like mid 2024 for us, we had kind of reached this point where there was, so for our personal for CarGurus, I think there was a great sense of urgency and hype around AI. We were aware that we should be doing something. And we were aware that we should urgently be doing something, and that was really a top-down thing, but figuring out exactly what that meant in each function was really different. We had different degrees of familiarity with AI and machine learning as a concept. So, the data science and machine learning team was nonplussed, unimpressed, like just, business as usual, really skeptical attitude still around this point. We had a lot of excitement from engineers and PMs. The engineers could now be machine learning engineers, PMs could now be engineers, like everyone's like promoting their skill sets. That's starting to happen in production and in silos. We have some parts of our sales organization that were still pretty unaware of like what an LLM was, what does this mean? And this is more hypothetical, right? These are stereotypes, but then there's other folks in customer support and elsewhere that really are seeing AI as a threat. They're afraid of what it means for them. And they're, reluctant around AI. So as this is happening, we're meant to be using AI. Everyone is trying to evaluate AI tools. So every vendor is now AI, that's still happening. But like there was that initial thing where it was like all vaporware, like overnight, everyone had AI. And it was like mostly really not delivering any value. But there were endless pitches that you could sit through. And then so people who lacked the confidence to even go down that road wouldn't get started. And then people who lacked the knowledge about the technology, it was very easy to get seduced with this promise and, go down some garden path with vendor. And you could spend a lot of money, but more importantly, a lot of employee time introducing these tools that then ultimately didn't have very much ROI. And so we learned some lessons from that. But basically at this point, that was the landscape. And I, had mentioned to my management, like, I think we need to sort of consolidate this and bring some best practices and help from our perspective in the data organization share some of the things that we know about using these systems, because at the end of the day, they are still machine learning systems. And that I guess I raised my hand at the right moment. So so then it was like, okay, Sarah, like you go do it. So really exciting opportunity, really intimidating opportunity to get to lead this cross-functional group. So so that brings me to the creation of AI Forward. So, and all of the images in this presentation were generated with not too much careful prompting to Gemini. So, they get the message across. Some of them are better than others. So, you'll notice that there are many actual words and some not actual words on these people. So it's anyway, I'll try not to get too distracted by it. Anyway, it is a cross-functional team of about 20 AI enablement leaders from across the business. So I won't read every single one of those bullet points, but people coming from really diverse perspectives, with very different degrees of comfort. And this is the group I would say that you need to bring together if you're trying to do this properly at your organization. So there's security concerns, there's legal concerns, there's governance concerns. And then there's also just the fact that no one is an expert at this. For the most part, people are trying to do this off the side of their desks. And you really need a community of support for that. You need a place for people to go and say, I can't figure this out. My team tried this, it didn't work. What do you recommend? And just to bring that group together to troubleshoot and brainstorm. So we worked together to develop strategy for education, for how we're going to measure adoption and progress, and how we're going to govern AI so that we can do all of this safely. And when we started out, we're kind of in the thick of it. So we started out with bi-weekly meetings, and since then we've moved to monthly stand-up style meetings where people talk about, for those outside of agile culture, it's what happened over the last month, what blockers or challenges are you facing, and what do you plan to do in the next month. And so that just is a nice check-in cadence for everyone. And then we have subcommittees focused on a few different focus areas, that's obvious, that meet more frequently. So we have, I'll talk a little bit about it in subsequent slides. And is this like you can ask questions. So if anyone has questions, you can ask them. I'm not monitoring the chat because I'm not as good at this as other people who do this more often, but.
Sarah, you're doing great, sir. I'll monitor the chat. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
All right. So this is, we kicked this off around mid-year of 2024.
We do have one question. Risk and compliance, is that in the IT? Or how'd you think about risk and compliance, Rob?
Yeah, so that's a combination of InfoSec and legal. We don't have like a specific group that is called that, but that assessment for everything we're doing is coming from a working group between those two teams.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about measurement. So so every discipline is going to have its own domain specific initiatives. They're going to explore their own software, potentially with vendors. But we did want to have one top level org-wide measurement that happened with some cadence so we could report on progress to ET and the board. So these are, what you would expect. So sentiment is really important. And so we're asking about sentiment about AI at work and also sentiment about AI in society. So we thought it was important to get a baseline on that, especially because we kicked this off during some of the more like doomsday moments. I mean, we'd kind of been in and out of it, but it was at a peak time. So we wanted to understand if the apprehension about AI at work, if there was any, extended to the broader society or vice versa. And then we wanted to look at baseline enablement. So um, I understand what AI tools are available for me to use. I understand when to use AI tools at work, and I understand how to use AI tools safely. Um, then we're looking at rate of use, self-reported. So how many, how frequently are you using this tool? How much time do you think this tool is saving you? Those are not perfect measurements, and we definitely encourage people to do like more rigorous data-driven evaluations when they can in their functions. But again, that's going to tie back to specific tools and specific vendors. And then what are you using it for? And so we get pretty granular about this. Yes.
So there's a couple of questions Bob asked about the amusement measure, the measure for usage. Is it number of prompts, amount of time, number of logins, hours?
Right. So those things are, when it's specific to a vendor, it can be all of those. So in general, like if you're working with various vendors, there are certain metrics that will be exposed to you. And then you might also be working with some sort of like productivity software that aggregates those things. So like in the engineering org, we leverage a number of software development applications that are AI enabled. And then we also measure their rate of use basically through an integration with a developer productivity tool specifically that we have. And so the answer, I guess, is like, yes, but it really depends on your function and what metrics you can get exposed. But we're not asking people to self-report their number of logins. So this is a survey, so that it's more like, so for this slide and for the org-wide thing, it's how often, and then how much time do you think it's saving you in a self-reported way? And then we do have a few platforms that are org-wide and general purpose that are like more LLM chat type functionality, and those we can measure logins, prompts, all those things. And we do take a look at that as supplementary reporting material. But one of the principles that we'll get into later is just to keep whatever your approach is pretty vendor agnostic because of the landscape changing. And so you don't want to have your top level measurement of success locked into a vendor relationship, because the offerings and the roadmaps, as Paul was saying earlier, are shifting so dramatically that you want to be able to remain as nimble as possible. So having something that's divorced from any of that, having that be your measurement, we thought was a good move.
Sarah, lots of questions coming in. I'll just try to summarize some of them. What does safety mean for you and your company?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we have a governance subcommittee, which I'll get to talk about. And that's this sort of tag team of IT and InfoSec and legal. And so those things are, safely, and there's a part of it that has to do with actual integration of AI technology into consumer and customer facing products. That is not something that I'm concerned with as much, but that's the same group of people, and it's looking at it from a liability and compliance standpoint. And then there's the same thing about sharing any sensitive internal data with these tools. So basically there's a bunch of, enterprise level security agreements that we look to have in place. They have to meet certain security standards, which like our, head of InfoSec can rattle off really quickly, but I cannot, but I've heard him say them a bunch really fast. So those are the types of things that we look for on like a vendor level. And then, so I think I would advise what we have found, which I think is a pretty intuitive finding, is that if you tell people that they have to be careful, they're going to really shy away from using this, especially people who feel like less technically confident. So maybe like in engineering, we're all inured to downloading a bunch of stuff on our computers and using it and being like, hope it's fine, right? But like most people don't operate that way, I find, outside of engineering, and hopefully most people don't operate that way inside of engineering. But yeah, it is. So if you tell people, oh, you have to be careful, you have to follow a bunch of guidelines, but then there's going to be a lot of hesitation around using the tool. So we try to make it very either like this vendor's gone through like a full compliance assessment, they're 100% secure, you can put anything that you would put into any other tool into this tool, or don't use it. So that's kind of like the binary that we've settled into for like 85 to 90% of people at the business. So hope I'll get like a little bit more into that later
And
on.
sorry, I can't remember on the slides. There's a lot of confusion on, are you talking about employee productivity tools? Are you doing process automation like customer service? Are you putting it into the product? You're doing all three?
Yes.
You can share what that is. I think it helps some of the questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's a great question. So it is incorporating it into any employee-facing workflow, any sort of productivity tool, basically anything that's employee-facing is what AI Forward is focused on. And then actual incorporation of like LLM and generative AI technology into our externally facing products, that's like living within our product and engineering organization. So the same people are involved in many instances, but the purview of this group is any use of AI that is to enable employees in any way. So it can be, you know, any integration with an existing vendor, any sort of like workflow plugin enablement that's AI enabled that's going to help us, take tickets faster, address cases faster in an external way. I hope that clarifies it. So it's really anything that's not just built into the core product.
And Claire, I know you guys are publicly traded, but just for the audience, you got a couple thousand people, and this sounds like you've got a cross-functional team. Do you also have a AI Center of Excellence team or VP AI, or is this the central body that's monitoring all this?
So this is the central body that's monitoring AI enablement. So that our executive sponsor is our CTO. So this involves like the people who are the, AI enablement champions are people who sit in, director plus positions in the organization for the most part. So this is a cross-functional team, but there is not a head of AI for enablement, as it were. We do have product engineering teams that are focused on AI and machine learning, and we do have teams dedicated to that in our products, if that helps
Great.
clarify.
Well, good. Keep driving. There's more questions, but let's keep driving and we'll pick up some more.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, I think that was enough time on that slide. And as I mentioned, and we already talked about quite a bit, there's department-specific initiatives and metrics. So depending on the specific vendor or technology that's being integrated, there's often a whole host of metrics that you can leverage. And these are great supplements to help story tell. But again, we don't want to get usually dependent on them as our like gold star, because the landscape is moving so quickly. So even though avoiding vendor lock is like always a good rule of thumb, it is really, really crucial in this environment. And then, so I mentioned that we have subcommittees. So basically, we want to leverage existing expertise around AI and AI best practices that already exist. So there are best practices for how to measure the effectiveness of machine learning models that we have a data science and machine learning team that's already very familiar with this. And so this is a little bit more around people exploring with AI in the product, but it also impacts vendor evaluations and just helping improve literacy of how do you reason about a value proposition that someone's telling you. So like if they're saying that, this non-deterministic LLM can do XYZ, how do you ask good questions about how that's implemented, or what are the guardrails that they have in place around safety? So an education for folks who are talking to vendors about AI functionality and looking at investing in different, mostly third-party providers. So that group is supportive with that. And then, as we already talked about quite a bit, we do have a governance team that is a combination of the IT folks that are focused on implementation, legal folks who are focused on compliance, and InfoSec, which is focused on security and best practices as we integrate all of these, all of these new vendors into our system. So another thing that you may have experienced, depending on where you work, is like the influx of requests to IT has, skyrocketed, right? So now everyone wants to POC a new tool, and we needed to find the right balance to not block people from innovating and experimenting. We want to allow that and make it possible, but we also want to avoid the most serious areas of risk. And so we have found that we need to do more education, not necessarily for like the 85 or 90% of people who are not going to want to push the envelope. Like, most people want to stay on the path, and they don't even want to take steps on the path you've laid out for them. And you need to make it like really, really clean and really nice and flat, and, hold their hand as they walk down it. But then there's like the, 5-ish to 10% of people who want to move as fast as possible, even if it burns everything to the ground, and you are trying to enable them as much as you can, right? So so this governance group is focused on both of those groups, but really had to get creative about how do we enable the people who are most enthusiastic about this, which is a good segue to this last slide, and then we can like open it up for questions again. But there's some, I think, guiding principles that have emerged as we've gone through this. So one is sort of a important adage in education, right? To meet people where they are. So you really want to identify slam dunk use cases. So what you don't want to do is get a tool and go tell everyone to use it, and not provide any training and not have a good idea yourself of how they're going to use it. So for the 85% of people who are hesitant, who are going to be hesitant, it's really important to look at the specifics of their work and understand what are high value incorporations that are sort of foolproof for this tool that they can use. And that should be part of the evaluation of the tool to begin with. So this is something that we worked with our strategic partnership and project management team to build out a whole AI pilot evaluation framework to help people understand how to go through this process, so that we're not just like hitting, buy on a bunch of AI upgrades and hoping for the best with our existing vendors, which is like a very tempting thing to do. So we have to provide training. We have to be very specific about how people are meant to use it. And then you have to really make space for people to grapple with this. So we found that and it can be specific. So this is like up to the enablement champions, whether you want to have like a jam session or a round table or a maker space, like whatever you want to call it. You have a space where there's two important components. One, like make time where people who have successfully used the technology can demo it for other people. And then just as important, if not more important, is make a space where people can be next to each other, where they're intentionally trying to do this new thing for the first time, and they have someone nearby who can help them if they get stuck. So they can just make it super low friction to go bother Jeff, because like everyone's agreed like that the team is doing this afternoon, right? So this is our AI afternoon, whatever it ends up being called. You're all sitting together. And if you're going to try to pick up this ticket and use AI for the first time to address it, there's someone that that has done like your exact job or something very close to it, who can jump in and help you troubleshoot and get to the next step. And like that is really the level of support that we find that people need to get confident with the technology. So it's not enough to just sort of say we're doing this. It's not enough to provide the tools. It's not enough to just provide training. You have to also say like, okay, here's the time that work stops, and we're going to learn how to do this. So okay, that's that's guiding principle number one. Guiding principle number two is embrace your early adopters. So these people are like, it sounds like they're good, but they are the most stressful people that you're going to interact with, right? Like you're trying to just barely, like you're trying to throw together a governance framework that's like held together with like scotch tape and prayers, and they're showing up and they're like, oh, I would like to integrate this agentic thing to this system that already isn't secure, and I want, so it's like it can be, they can be a lot, and they can be.
Sarah, that's Raymond Hunter here. Raymond's like that if you ever worked at a company here, right, Raymond?
So, but the bottom line is that like it is, so these people easily are going to take up 60% of your time. And so it is important to remember that they are going to pay that forward many times over by mentoring the people around them, by being the resource for the people who are less enthusiastic or more hesitant. And they're also going to like push your thinking. They're going to make sure you're keeping up with the latest thing. Like that's positive pressure. So I think it's just really important. And I've had to like help reframe with the folks who are more on like the enablement and guardrail side. Like I think it's just important to bring these groups together and like have them have relationships with each other so that it doesn't become a thing where like one group is resenting the other group for holding them back or slowing them down, right? And we want to understand that we're working together and that we are grateful to these people for helping us drive our business forward, because ultimately like the business you want is not the one where these early adopters leave because they're not getting the freedom they want. You want to be able to support their freedom, and it's going to take you more time and like a lot more care to be able to do that safely, but it is worth doing. Guiding principle number three, it is never going to feel like you are keeping up. Like there is, there is a daily news show about the articles in GenAI that you can watch every weekday. So it is, you're never going to feel like this is enough, that you're doing enough. And so it's just, you just kind of have to keep going, right? And the landscape moves so quickly, like it is sort of a rigged game. Like you're not going to ever, there's no like, success looks like whatever you've decided the metrics are, and you might make progress against those metrics. But this feels like a really hard thing to get your arms around. And so I think it's just important to acknowledge that. It's important to acknowledge that with all the people who are trying to do it, and just like it's a one foot in front of the other kind of thing. And the good thing is that like it's so collaborative. It is like a great opportunity to let people surprise you, because like the people who are the experts that that we're relying on are like employees who learned how to do this two weeks ago. So it is really different. It is like onboarding your entire company at once, right? So a lot of what you need to go through to teach people how to use these tools that are transforming the way they work, it's like onboarding a new employee when you're onboarding everybody at once, and the expert who's doing the onboarding has like 2-week lead on the new people. So it's just, yeah, it's important to give yourself grace. And then I already kind of said like tool agnostic approaches are really important for your like North Star metrics, your measurement, and as much as possible, like even the processes that you design around this, because yeah, there's always there's shiny stuff coming out all the time. So don't try not to get too locked in if you can help it.
Sarah,
So
this is great. Let's open up questions here. Let's, instead of me talking, if you can raise your hand, I'll do it that way. Start with Lucinda and then Raymond. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, hi, thanks very much. This is a great talk. I really appreciate it. So we have the guiding principles, we have all different things. Can you talk us through an example of a particular thing or capability or something? And like how do all these pieces come together? Because it's one thing to see all the list of things, but it's like, how does it fit together for an actual example?
yeah, so yes, I can give an example. So I won't name any vendors because I generally like try not to do that, but I will at least tell the story arc within the company. So and my example, forgive me, is going to come from the engineering organization because that's the one I'm still most familiar with. But basically we got a tool to help with coding. we bought everybody a license and we said, go use it. This was in early 2024. So the sophistication of this tool, when a lot of people went and tried it, was lacking. So people went and tried it. Like they're good engineers. They went and tried to use the tool. They were like, this tool kind of sucks. Like this is not helping us. And I don't like AI. I think AI is dumb, right? Like that was kind of the outcome that we got from that. And then when things started getting really exciting, several months later, then we had already created this barrier where people were like, oh, AI is this tool that we've been told is our one blessed tool, and it wasn't helping me. So we had to go back to procurement. We had to like go back to IT and say like, okay, so we actually don't like this tool. There's a lot of enthusiasm about these other tools that we're not allowed to use right now. And so we actually need to put these other tools through our procurement process. We need to do this yesterday. Then we're going to have a bake-off where every employee gets a week to experiment with these tools, decide which one they like the best, and then moving forward, that's their license. And they can keep the old one if they like that still. They can choose one of the new ones. And then we're going to support these multiple choices of coding tools for a period of time because this landscape is evolving so quickly. We don't want to choose one, and we want to give employees the flexibility to use the one that they want. And then we left it up to individual engineering teams if they wanted to support one versus another, for like cohesion on the team. And we're also like, now we have a group that is supporting rules files and like best practices with those tools and getting really specific about how to use them within our ecosystem. So that's like, I guess, an example of kind of how not to do it and how we tried to come back and correct it. And we've seen our efficiency gains and adoption rates go up. And we do work with a vendor so that we can actually directly measure that in terms of a lot of like concrete data-driven metrics that have to do with developer productivity.
Thanks, it was great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Awesome. Awesome. It's really great to get that insight on how a company deals with it. My question was around how do you keep it simple? Like the KISS principle. Like how do you keep it really simple? Because there's so many veins to this. I mean, you can go off on so many tangents, the rabbit hole. And for someone, their introduction to this, they're hearing all this noise everywhere, like how do you clear all that away and make it, palpable to the person, make it so that they understand it's how you use it. It's for you. It's not this big, scary black box, if that makes sense.
No, totally. That makes sense. I think it is just about exposure and like making it really concrete. So saying like, okay, I think there's different kinds of overwhelm, right? I think there's fear and then there's just like genuine overwhelm. And I think like genuine overwhelm, the good news is like it exhausts itself. Like they're just going to come back and be like, okay, like what are we doing? Like I tried 8 different things over the weekend. I tried to build all this stuff. I don't know what the future of my career looks like, but like this tool and what we're all doing together at work is like a concrete thing to latch onto that is not doing nothing, right? Or doing everything. So I think like most people are grateful for the structure if they're kind of like this type of person that's going to want to go after everything in every avenue and every possibility. I think like there's another kind of just like hearing about it in the media a lot and not really understanding what it is. And I think like that people in that camp more who are not actually chasing down all these technologies, but just getting a lot of anxiety, they're just like happy to be like, okay, we're doing an AI. Like this is the AI and I am doing it. Like, so I think it's like there's both camps and it's kind of coming from the same underlying place emotionally maybe, but like some of us console ourselves with like a lot of mental busyness and research and other people just kind of sit in the dread. So I think yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Great. I'll go Robin and Matt. Go ahead, Robin.
Hi, yes, Sarah, this is awesome. I have so many questions. I've been putting them in the chat, but the one that keeps coming up is I hear I latched onto you saying some structure is needed, but too much telling them exactly what they have to do is going to shut them down. I hear that. So I'm walking away with you have to give some structure, but also be very loose, it sounds like, with giving them, just like, here's what we know, now go and play, like the sandbox concept, right?
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise people get a little too like gun shy to say, well, you're forcing me to do it a certain way. So that's an interesting balance. So
Really, it depends on the team. So I think that's the important thing about the AI forward group is that they can read the room, they can know the temperature of their team. So like we've had all of the stuff I described in engineering, and then in people and talent, like they
Right.
had a roundtable because they were seeing that their adoption was lower, and they were like, okay, like what's going on, right? In this very like sensitive way where there was like a very, there was a very streamlined, interactive, like Lucid UI that I didn't even know you could use Lucid that way. And like that, and they're all participating and saying like this is how I feel about it. And what came out of that was like, oh, we haven't been specific enough with this group about the type of information they can put into the tools. And they've been like so trained to be gun shy about sensitive data and sensitive information and technology. And they've heard so many things about like not putting sensitive information into LLMs that they don't understand that like now we have an enterprise agreement with an LLM and they can put information into it. So
Right.
it really is like very dependent on the group, and it's just important.
Okay.
Like sometimes you just need to do a thing and then see how it goes. And then if it goes well, great, like try to understand what was good about it and lean in to that. And sometimes it doesn't go well, and then you have to learn why it didn't go well, but then that helps you like do the next thing.
Right.
I think
I
just
think
being
that, yeah.
very
Go ahead. Yeah.
just being very iterative and like very specific to each individual group of people.
Yeah. And I know I may not get this, I can follow with you offline, but that was going to bring me into you asking exactly what you said, which was about every group, the mindset of the people. Exactly. I deal with this a lot of different groups. Their use cases are so different. You're in IT. I deal a lot with sales enablement, marketing, HR. They do not think like IT folks. It takes a lot to get them to the table. So do you have like a do you create frameworks for use cases that everybody can use? Like, is that something like an SOP? Is this something that you've created?
Yeah, we have. I wouldn't,
Okay.
we've tried a lot of stuff. I wouldn't say that that was like a slam dunk, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that is an approach we tried. I think that some of it is just about exposure and also about incentives and like making that space, right?
Okay.
And that also like the how does it feel when you're doing it? How fun is it? How social is it? Like a lot of these things are really important for different subcultures within the organization. And so like tailoring it, like for instance, our sales organization ended up having like a March Madness prompt writing tournament, which like people got really into. And that, is something that I feel like would have gotten crickets in engineering. So I think like
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's great. So they actually have a bracket where prompts competed with prompts, and that's fantastic. That's great. Go ahead, Matt. I think it was. Who had your hand up, Matt? Just have a question, Matt.
Yep. Thanks, Sarah. So you mentioned that you're not familiar with Zoom. So would that mean that you typically use Microsoft Teams within your organization? And if it's too specific, then no worries. That's part one.
So we use Google.
Okay.
So we use Google Meet and Slack. And
So that-
I do use Zoom with vendors, but I am like, oh, somehow forever apologizing about it. Because I'm always like, oh, I've never done this before. Like I totally have. So I don't really know. I don't have a good excuse.
Oh, no worries. Just but it kind of leads into part two, which is when you mentioned you're tool agnostic. Is that kind of vendor agnostic? And then how does that play into safety? So it seems like your IT department has a solution for that, where if you're already using Google and Slack and multiple, the reason I mentioned Microsoft was because typically people will stay within the Microsoft stack and that might be easier. But how do you work within your organization? If you encourage people to be tool agnostic, does that mean vendor agnostic for different tools? And then how does that play into the safety piece of the enterprise?
Yeah, so I did mean vendor agnostic, and we So yes, we had like definitely encourage people to explore offerings that are already built into the like the vendors we overwhelmingly work with. So like you know, we are customers of Google and AWS, and so you know, there's certainly there's great elucidation of the functionality that you can get from these companies that we already have relationships with, and that is meant to be like the first stop for anybody. That being said, like there are functions, there's functionality, there's capabilities that are offered by vendors that are not the ones that we've already gone with. And we want to let people be able to experiment with those. And so for that, we have a lighter weight, rapid procurement process where we're doing like a basic check for security if we like onboard them as a vendor, and we're doing like a basic legal compliance check. So we try to get that done quickly, and then we say, okay, like you can go experiment with this. So I hope that answers the question. We basically needed to come with like a lighter weight procurement process for people who wanted to explore things out. And this is, you know, this has not been like the favorite of procurement and infosec and legal, but like it also is something that we felt we needed to do to support the innovation culture at our company.
Thanks. Sounds like you're trying a diverse array of tools and vendors, and that's kind of the best way to figure out what's out there and what's most useful. Thank you.
But just to hold on that, Sarah, but for the general employee, is there one kind of start for secure employee chatbot, I assume, and then if that doesn't work, then you can maybe get another specialized one, or you let some people use Copilot, some people use Gemini, some people use ChatGPT.
No, so okay, so if you want to put anything sensitive into the tool, it needs to be an SSO like enabled thing that has gone through our procurement process. And if you want to have something else be enabled, it has to offer like actually different functionality. So like it's so people at our company currently have access to 3 different chatbots through like our approved procurement. So if you were trying to get another one, that would probably like not be approved unless you had a very good reason. So it really is about letting people explore like distinctive functionality. And it is, I think, it's also about this moment and the fact that like what these vendors are even doing is changing so quickly. So I don't foresee us like, you know, provided that things stabilize a little bit, I don't foresee us continuing to have like this proliferation of things we're experimenting with indefinitely, but it's just like there's no other way to keep up with the space right now.
This is a fantastic, Sarah. Lucinda, you want the last question before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd already asked one, but yeah. Anyway, thank you. So really interested in hearing about the bake-offs and how you organized them. Our company was in a bake-off, and it was pretty stressful. But just if you could give an example of a bake-off that you did, and like what you looked for, how things were decided, etc.
Yeah, so this was more of like an individual bake-off because we kind of said, okay, this is the menu, and then each individual person is going to choose. In terms of like a bake-off between vendors, that's just good fun, you know. I mean, I think like there's no reason for that to be AI specific, and you know, we're going through one of those for like a BI tool provider in my day job. And it's and that's, you know, so I guess in general, right, like you just come up with criteria, you come up with a timeline, you understand who is the group that you're going to be getting input from, and then you just want to be really mindful of like employee time. Like it does take time to investigate multiple things. For it to be a true fair evaluation, you probably want the same cohort of people to be evaluating both things if you're truly going to go forward with one versus the other. And so actually, I had forgotten, but so the individual bake-off did start as like a company level bake-off with a smaller group of engineers that agreed to trial the two new tools that we were seriously considering, and we couldn't choose. So basically like they were so divided. That's why we decided to like ultimately open it up to let each individual make their own decision.
So really fantastic discussion, Sarah. And I at least want to, I mean, we got fortunate that we deal with a lot of companies on this AI journey, and to have such strong leadership support at CarGurus that has supported such a robust rollout is really exceptional. And I think it's going to really bode well for your attracting and retaining talent and the amount of innovation. So kudos to you and your team and your whole management team. It's really, really exciting. And everyone else, thanks for joining. Let's keep the learning going. We'll have the same conversation next week. Todd Lufborough from a company called Viral Gains is going to be talking about what they're doing at their software startup. So let's keep learning.